Hi everyone, my name is Tyler and I'm here to help you get into your new 40k army. 40k as a hobby can be very expensive to get into, but my goal with this series is to help you get a full army going without having to break the bank. Before we dive into the list, let's talk about some basic rules that we're going to be using for the list building process here. Our first goal is going to be to keep it affordable and utilize box deals. For everything that we're going to be looking at today, we're going to be looking at it from an MSRP value from Games Workshop themselves. Now, I don't recommend buying everything MSRP from Games Workshop. Often, local hobby stores, eBay, Amazon, things of that nature will have much better deals for the kits that I'm about to show you. Our second goal is that we're going to be making the list in steps, starting at 500 points and working our way up to 1,000 points, 1,500 points, and 2,000 points. Our third rule is we're going to be avoiding Forge World and Finecast. Many Forge World models are often very pricey for the points that they provide you on the table, and the resin used can be hard to work with, especially for beginners. As far as Finecast goes, I just don't think that they're quite as high quality as the plastic models that you can get otherwise. Our fourth goal is to aim to make lists with decent competitive viability. We're going to be trying to make lists that can do well at casual tournaments, in your games with friends, or maybe even get you some wins at major tournaments. Our fifth and final rule is the most important one. Just because I don't mention a model in my list, it doesn't mean that it isn't good. The most important thing that you can do is collect models that you think are cool. There's an entire side of the hobby that has nothing to do with playing, and if you don't like the models you're painting and building, you're not going to get the most out of this hobby. Today we're going to be talking about the Terror of 10th Edition, the Eldar. The Eldar are one of the oldest living factions in Warhammer 40k, having existed since the War in Heaven against the Necrons and alongside the Orcs. They are your typical elf archetype, but in space. They're very fast, they're very in tune with their magic, they're very spiritual. If you think Legolas in Lord of the Rings and then you give them a space blaster, you're not that far off. After their battle in the War in Heaven against the Necrons, they became the most dominant force in the galaxy for millions and millions of years. They did ultimately fall from grace because of their hedonism birthing the Chaos God Slaanesh, causing them to lose literal billions upon billions of Eldar lives in the process of her creation. In modern day 40k, they are moving around on caravan planets that they call craft worlds. These are continent-sized spaceships where the Eldar live their lives, they train, they mate, they reproduce, all of the things that you would expect people to do. So why should you consider collecting these space elves? Well, for one, Eldar units are fast. Their units on average are going to move somewhere between 1 to 4 inches further than their counterparts in many other armies. As someone who believes that speed is probably the most important stat in 40k, this is huge. They're also an army that have a lot of tricks up their sleeve. Between fire and fade abilities, reactionary movement, easy fallback and shoot charge, lots of units that just individually have access to some kind of shoot and scoot ability, it is very hard to pin an Eldar down for multiple turns. Because of their speed and their general good tricks, Eldar are very rarely ever a bad army. 40k ultimately is a game about board control, and at the end of the day, no matter what, being faster than everyone else is going to make board control easier. If you can go to places that your opponent can't, or if you can outmaneuver them, then you're just going to have a better time. The secondary game is also incredibly easy for Eldar, between mid-game redeploys, 20+ inch moving units, and very solid lone-op characters that can do whatever you need them to do. Their army and detachment rule also allow you to cheat with your dice in a dice game. You don't even need weighted toilet dice to get away with super sneaky wins. This was so powerful that this ability got reduced by half of what it used to be, and it's still one of the best army rules in the game. They're also currently a pretty cost-efficient army in terms of points per dollar because they have gotten so many repeated nerfs, taking them from a 70% win rate army at the start of the game to a 50% win rate army right now. But why should you avoid collecting Eldar? For one, these models are old. Eldar have multiple models that are older than I am. This means that they have a large number of models, especially characters, that are in either Finecast resin or metal. This is one of the few armies that does rely on these resin models to perform at the absolute top level. If you are looking for acceptable alternatives to GW resin, the Eldar community has pointed me towards companies like RTLW, but otherwise you're going to have to look at some less popular options like we're going to in this video. Beyond that, Eldar are frail. They have speed, they have tricks, they have great damage, but all of that has to come at a cost. In this case, it is their durability. Even with all the tricks in the book, a dedicated anti-infantry unit will likely pick up a defensively stacked unit of Guardians. Having a lack of good, durable mid-board units also makes the game a lot harder for newer players. While an experienced Eldar player is going to dominate the game, a new Eldar player might just get blown off the table and not really understand what they did wrong. When they are properly balanced though, Eldar are a very high skill cap army. Their mobility makes the game so much easier at a baseline level. Managing all the tricks while getting out your damage and keeping your unit safe can be a very taxing process. This last one is not necessarily something about the game itself, but because of all the tricks that Eldar have and their tendency to be near the top of the food chain almost regardless of addition or balanced data slate, I have personally seen several times people refuse to play with Eldar players simply because they brought Eldar. While I think that this is very poor sportsmanship, just be aware that it is something that can happen. The army rule for Eldar is Strands of Fate. At the start of the game, you roll 66. If you don't like the result of those 6 dice, you can mulligan and reroll all of them again, but now you only roll 5, then 4, then 3, and you can keep doing it over and over again until you're happy with the results. Once you have these dice, you can use them once per phase before making a dice roll to get that specific advance on an advance roll, a battle shock test, a charge roll, a damage roll, a hit roll, a saving throw, or a wound roll. Strands of Fate is such a powerful rule that even after losing 6 of their fate dice at the start of the game, this is still probably one of the best rules in the entire game. Being able to guarantee a 6-inch advance, being able to guarantee max damage on a Bright Lance or a cannon or anything like that is so insanely powerful. Being able to use your 4-ups for saving rolls for the Incarn or Avatar of Cain are also very, very good. There are also a lot of units in the Eldar Index that either generate additional fate dice or allow you to change the results of fate dice after you've rolled them, meaning that you can really get a lot of extra value out of this army rule. The detachment rule for Eldar is unparalleled foresight. Every time an Eldar unit from your army is selected to shoot or fight, you can reroll 1 hit roll, and you can reroll 1 wound roll when resolving those attacks. This really promotes Eldar to play an MSU style where they have as many units on the board with as few units in them as possible to maximize the amount of rerolls. It also very heavily incentivizes things like Bright Lances and other very powerful low volume of attack weapons. It is a lot more meaningful to reroll the hit and wound roll on a Bright Lance than it is to reroll the hit roll and wound roll on, say, a Shuriken Cannon. Because we are in a situation where there are so few up-to-date plastic models for Eldar, and Eldar units have a lot of things that kind of do similar jobs, I only have 2 lists for you today. The first one's going to be covering a more traditional Eldar style list, and the second one is going to be covering a Ynnari style list in case you want to be able to splash in things like Drukhari into your list. To start us off at 500 points, what we're going to be doing is going and picking up 1 Combat Patrol Eldar, and then we're also going to be picking up 1 box of Rangers. The Eldar box has over 500 points of models in it, which is partly why we need to make sure that we pick up these Rangers. So what we're going to be working with in terms of the list itself is going to be 1 Farseer with a Witchblade and the Weeping Stones. The Weeping Stones are going to increase our Fate Dice generation by making it so that whenever the Guardian unit that it's leading kills a unit, then the Farseer is going to generate an extra d6. This means that our Guardian Defenders are going to be generating extra fate dice for us whenever they are on a command point, but also whenever they kill something, meaning that we can potentially generate multiple fate dice per turn off of them. The Wind Riders are going to be going around and performing actions or just getting good angles with their shuriken cannons. The ranges are an answer for potential good forward deploy to either screen out enemy vehicles, potentially block some charges, or since they're such a cheap unit, be disposable fodder for the Guardians to use as bait to come out on the next turn. We're also going to be running the Wraithlord with 2 Flamers and 2 Bright Lances alongside the Ghost Glaive. The Wraithlord is also going to be able to generate us more Fate Dice, so it's going to be much easier for you as a new Eldar player to get comfortable with Fate Dice as a mechanic, and when you should and shouldn't use them. Moving up to 1000 points, we're going to be picking up 2 boxes of support weapons, and then we're also going to be making a strange purchase here for most Eldar players, and picking up 1 box of Corsair Void Scarred. Now, the Corsairs are not a typical unit you will see in a lot of Eldar lists, because they are outclassed by some of those resin models. But since we aren't allowed to use those because of the rules that I have for my list building, and because they have so many extra bits and bobs that you might use for future kit bashes, we're going to pick these up now so that you have a lot more flexibility down the line with what you might choose to do. As far as the list goes, the Farseer is going to be switched over to having the Reader of Runes enhancement, so that way he can reroll fate dice for you to possibly generate more 6s, and then he can also still flip a 6 because of his Farseer ability. This is going to combo really well with things like your Wraithlord, who want to get high damage attacks in on vehicles or even potentially onto high power infantry so that he can start generating you extra fate dice. You can also use these to help out the D cannons as they kind of do the same job. The Corsairs are going to be broken up into 2 separate 5-mans. We're going to be having one of them be Void Reavers and one of them be Void Scarred. The Void Reavers being cheaper just means that they're a little bit better of a choice to kind of be that objective holder for you. But if you really wanted to, you could have both of these units be Void Reavers and it'd probably be fine. At 1500 points, we're going to be going and picking up 1 Warwalker. We're also going to be picking up a Farseer Skyrunner, and then we're going to be picking up the big centerpiece model Avatar of Khaine. The Avatar of Khaine is an absolute beatstick who's going to basically kill anything that you put in front of him, especially when he has some of the support from Fate Dice and the other units that are in the army. The Warlock Skyrunner is a little bit of a weird choice for a lot of Eldar players, as they might be more used to seeing the Farseer Skyrunner, but as long as you magnetize the head, that's really all you have to do to be able to swap him out between a Farseer and a Warlock. The 6 Wind Riders are going to be ran together so that the Warlock Skyrunner can provide even better support than normal, and the Warwalker is going to be equipped with 2 Bright Lances. At 2000 points, we're going to be picking up 1 more box of Wind Riders, we're going to be picking up 1 more Warwalker, we're also going to be picking up 1 more Wraithlord, and then rounding it all out with 1 Eldar Autarch. The Autarch is going to be built as an Autarch Wayleaper with a Dragon Fusion Gun, a Banshee Mask, the Starglaive, and the Phoenix Gem enhancement, which is going to make this Lone Op unit be able to come back to life and be even more annoying than he was before. We're also going to be making sure that the Wind Riders are all in 1 9-man unit so that they get the absolute maximum amount of support from the Skyrunner and become a pretty solid force for actually going around and picking up a lot of units. The Wraithlords are both going to be equipped with the same loadout, the Warwalkers are both going to have the same loadout, and overall this is going to be a list that's going to be able to generate and manipulate a lot of Fate Dice to help a new Eldar player get into the hang of really using this cool mechanic. If you want to go into the Ynnari style so that you can potentially use some Drukhari units, maybe you've already got a Drukhari army or something like that going, then what we're going to do is the 500 point list is going to be the exact same. At the 1000 point level though, we're going to be picking up 2 D cannons, 1 box of Void Scarred, just like you saw before, but this time we're going to be making sure to also pick up Yvraine. The list here is not going to be all that different from the 1000 point list that we saw for the first Eldar list. What we're going to do is cut one of the Wind Riders to bring it down to 3. We're going to be making both of the Corsairs into Void Reavers, and then we're just going to be slotting in Yvraine with the extra points that we have. At 1500 points, depending on when you watch this video, We're either going to be able to go and actually pick up the new Kill Team Mandrakes box, or we're going to have to rely on going into Age of Sigmar and picking up some good proxies. If you've seen my Drakari video, you'll know that I recommend the Namarti Thralls as a great proxy and substitute for the Mandrakes. We're also going to be going and picking up our Avatar of Cain equivalent for the Ynnari side in the Incarn. The Incarn is very nasty, being able to teleport all over the board very easily and start picking off really good options. By having your support weapons be able to potentially blow away a weak unit that's hiding behind cover, you can sometimes get the Incarn right onto your enemy's backline. You can also do this by having the Wraithlord go in and charge something. Maybe the Guardians get a good pick off. It doesn't really matter. The Incarn is going to be blinking everywhere in the game. The Mandrakes, you're only going to be able to fit one of them for now because we're bringing in the second unit of Wind Riders, but they are going to be very nice for doing a lot of those secondary objectives. You could swap out one of the Wind Riders in order to slot in the second Mandrake unit. Ultimately, that's your discretion, but I think that this gives you an overall good option of having units go all over the board very quickly. It wouldn't be a Ynnari list without having a little bit of everything from all of the different factions of Eldar. So at 2,000 points, we're going to go and we're going to be picking up 2 boxes of Scourges. We're going to be picking up 1 box of Kabalite Warriors, and then we're also going to pick up a Death Jester. A Death Jester equipped with Fate's Messenger is absolutely disgusting. Having played against it in my very first game of 10th edition and seeing just the kind of damage that this thing can do when it's able to very easily manipulate dice for the sustained hits and being able to just pump out tons and tons of shots means that this lone op guy is going to do so much work for you from the back lines. Beyond that, the Scourges with 4 Dark Lances and Shard Carbines are going to be able to poke their heads out, blast whatever they want, get back into cover, meaning that you don't even need to spend CP for them to get their maximum efficiency, meaning that you can use that elsewhere, like on your Guardian Defenders. The Kabalite Warriors can kind of be substituted for almost whatever you want. My initial version of this list had Storm Guardians. You could just use regular Guardian Defenders. You can use the Kabalite Warriors. You can have them be witches. You can have them be Harlequin troops. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they're going to be getting led by Yvraine. Their job is mainly to do damage and maybe potentially hold some objectives because Yvraine can be very annoying with her ability to resurrect dead models. If you put these guys near an objective and just have 1 or 2 of them poking their heads out, they get blasted, the whole unit doesn't die, Yvraine can resurrect them back onto the objective for you to hold. But that's going to do it for what I have for you for the Eldar list today. Overall, Eldar are a very tricky army. They can be very hard to figure out lists for because their damage almost seems like it comes out of nowhere. They have a lot of great options that I didn't include because there really aren't any quote-unquote bad Eldar units. There are just ones that are a lot less efficient. If you are okay with resin, you're going to have a much better time with this army as you can go pick up things like Swooping Hawks and Fire Guardians with Flagon, but this is still going to be absolutely fine. Now, because I did use 2 different styles of lists, I'm going to be focusing more on the Eldar list that did not have Yvraine, because being able to use Kabalite Warriors and Scourges and all those other things from other armies will lower your cost, but doesn't do a very good job of representing the cost of Eldar as a faction. So because of that, they're going to be going near the bottom of the $600 to $750 tier, right between the World Eaters and Chaos Demons. And that is everything I have for you today. If you enjoyed the video, please consider doing all the YouTube pleasantries. If you want to help support the content so that I can continue to put out videos, consider becoming a member on YouTube or supporting me over on Ko-fi. Supporters receive things like early videos, shoutouts, heavier weight on their votes for community polls for what content I do next, as well as one-on-one help with building up their lists. Thank you all, and I will see you in the next video.